Hello and welcome to the Washington Urban Debate League's Junior Varsity Video Series. Today, we're going to talk about the Career and Technical Education Affirmative. First, we'll go over some of the basics, walk you through parts of the case, then we'll talk about extending the affirmative, and then answering this case when you're on the negative. So when I say CTE, I'm not talking about the concussions in football. In education policy, CTE refers to career and technical education, otherwise known as vocational school. However you name it, these are the schools that prepare students to directly enter the workforce with some sort of professional certification instead of a more traditional college preparatory work. Many folks who take CTE courses and still attend college, but they do so to continue to develop a specific skill, not for a generic liberal arts degree. According to the federal government, there are 15 different sectors of career and technical education: agriculture, entertainment, building and construction, business, education, energy, engineering, fashion, health, hospitality, IT, manufacturing, marketing, public services, and transportation. In this debate case, the affirmative will make some generic claims about engaging with all of these sectors and delve deeper into the information technology sector. When you go to write your own case, you can pick any of the 15 sectors of CTE you'd like to go into something that interests you. The inherency for this case is pretty straightforward. Vocational schools had to be rebranded as career and technical education because of the stigma related to the inferior coursework and less stringent requirements traditionally associated with vocational training. Many of these professional focuses require extra laboratories, resources, or specialized instructors to teach. They are often poorly funded so that they can't properly teach the programs necessary. In Washington, D.C., for example, Phelps High School reports that they haven't had a qualified teacher for their electrical engineering course in several years, yet the course remains on the books. New funds and programs are needed to continue to adjust career and technical education programs to a changing economy, focusing more on computer skills. Advantage one is the economy. There are more and more jobs in manufacturing, information technology, and other in-demand fields as the economy adapts to automation and globalization, but we simply do not have enough qualified people to fill these jobs. Furthermore, the value of a high school diploma continues to slip. Many jobs ask for a bachelor's degree, even if it's just to filter the potential applicants and not actually required for the position. This case asserts that effective career and technical education can train workers for these in-demand positions and will increase the value and economic productivity of people who just have a high school diploma. The results is that we can prevent slow economic growth, which could cause international conflict. Advantage two is cybersecurity. The United States is increasingly targeted for cyber attacks by other countries and independent hackers. Examples are all over the news, ranging from Russia attacking the United States election process, the attacks on Sony, Uber, Equifax, Target, and the Office of Management and Budget, just to name a few. However, we don't have enough cybersecurity specialists to secure key public and private networks against attack. Career and technical education can teach these cybersecurity skills and encourage students to go into cybersecurity fields, responding to this need. Cyber attacks are very dangerous, with the ability to disrupt life as we know it, making you as vulnerable to attack, collapsing the electrical grid, and more. This file argues that career and technical education in K-12 can solve economic growth and can train the necessary workers in cybersecurity skills to prevent catastrophes. First, the affirmative needs to win that K-12 career and technical education is a quality product. If the negative pushes you, you'll also need to delve into the following areas. You'll need to defend that people are actually interested in these fields. You'll need to defend that even if K-12 CTE isn't enough to solve, that forms a strong basis and encourages people to go into these careers that they can pursue later in college. You'll have to defend that this will start working quickly. You'll have to defend that the federal government is necessary instead of state or local programs. And you'll have to defend that the program is flexible enough to adapt to a changing workforce and a changing economy. So how do you use this case in a debate round? Well, in the first affirmative constructive, make sure to read and highlight the case before you go to a tournament. There's a lot of good evidence in this file, so you'll have to highlight it down to make sure you can get through it all during the first speech. Be sure to be ready with examples for cross-examination. Think about the consequences of a slowing economy on the international arena and the impact that the United States has on the global economy. Also consider what might happen if a massive cyber attack unleashed on a defenseless United States. Could we manage without the internet? Without the power grid? How would transportation, healthcare, or school function without electricity or the internet for an extended period of time? For the second affirmative constructive, tell a story at the top to summarize the case. For example, career and technical education can give the high school diploma new value. Strong CTE will strengthen the U.S. economy, filling vital skills gaps as the economy evolves, and provide the skills necessary to protect our country from cyber attack. The plan will keep the U.S. safe and prevent conflict caused by slow economic growth. You should answer any arguments from the first negative constructive, reading evidence only when necessary. And you should finally do some generic impact calculus, talking about the time frame, the magnitude, and the probability. With this case, cybersecurity is the big opportunity to have some fun. Most of the impacts the other teams will bring up are inevitable in the world where the U.S. loses the battle for cyberspace. The first affirmative rebuttal should also have a 1 or 2 sentence overview to review the case. Remember, you have to remind the judge what you are talking about. The negative just spoke for 13 minutes. Answer any inherency and solvency arguments from the block, and choose one of your advantages that you're winning the most, either economic growth or cybersecurity, and extend it here. Be sure to do more specific impact calculus, comparing your outcomes to the negative impacts using time frame, probability, and magnitude. Be sure to kick the other advantage you're not using. To kick an argument means that you're going to answer any offensive arguments, such as link or impact turns, that the other team made. This means you also need to extend a defensive argument as a concession that the other team is correct. This prevents them from using this advantage against you later. In the second affirmative rebuttal, tell the story of your affirmative, focusing on the advantage you're still going to talk about after the 1AR. Answer any 2NR arguments on inherency and solvency and against your remaining advantage, and then focus on a comparative analysis. Why is the affirmative more important than not doing anything? Why is it better than any counterplan that has been introduced? And why is it worth doing even if there are potentially negative consequences? So how do you answer this case as the negative? We'll talk about the on-case debate first, followed by an overview of off-case options. The Inherency Debate is a place that you can make some serious headway. Career and technical education exists in the status quo. State governments often support existing CTE programs, and there are already some federal programs in this sector, especially related to STEM promotion. President Obama supported multiple programs to expand apprenticeships and other related programs. And President Trump has already taken action on CTE. Secretary DeVos made apprenticeships and CTE a core part of her goals for the Department of Education. Let's get into some details here. Inherency doesn't just mean that the plan doesn't exist now. It means that it won't happen in the status quo. Attitudinal inherency is a fancy term that means beliefs or attitudes that currently prevent the passage of a plan. These don't necessarily exist in the status quo, but talk about whether it will eventually happen now, with or without the plan. Just because Secretary DeVos or President Trump hasn't done the plan yet, doesn't mean they won't next year, since it's on their agenda. The affirmative is trying to solve a massive structural problem in the U.S. economy that is the result of two twin global forces of automation and globalization. Is the solution to add a few classes in high school and to print a few more certificates? Can younger students learn enough for CTE to make a difference in the workforce? Does additional college or community college after CTE necessary to solve? Can these programs respond quickly enough to a changing economy? And is the stigma of vocational school still there, discouraging folks from taking these courses or from funding and implementing them properly? On the economy advantage, there's definitely some defensive options. You could talk about how the economy is doing well now. If it's strong, there is a low risk of economic-related conflict in the status quo. You could also attack their solvency on this advantage. Does career and technical education actually fill skill gaps or improve the value of high school diplomas? It's always important to consider some offense as well. Spending on CTE could expand the federal deficit, hurting economic growth and leading to the impacts of the 1AC. On the cybersecurity advantage, let's talk defense. Can we stop all these attacks coming from all over the world? Do cyber attacks really do a lot of damage, or is it just a bunch of people stealing movies before they come out? Can existing cyber defense take care of the majority of their problems now? And does CTE really make a difference? Are we going to teach classified cybersecurity techniques to kids still in high school? In terms of offense, the focus on preventing hacking could trade off with focusing on preventing attacks from foreign governments and preparing offensive cyber weapons. Additionally, artificial intelligence is pushing cybersecurity forward now and is arguably more effective than humans. But the plan could trade off with the development of AI in order to create more jobs for humans. And with many tech jobs, does formal schooling actually work? Or are independent coding boot camps and other learn-at-home projects actually better at developing cyber skills? Is there a trade-off between these two models? Let's talk off-case arguments. This affirmative links to all of the disadvantages the WUDL has produced. On the spending disadvantage, most CTE programs will require specialized teachers, resources or equipment, and other large expenditures to make them teach properly. They will also require lots of infrastructure to test quality and make sure the certifications are taken seriously by the business community. Multiply that across the vast majority of schools in the country, and you're talking serious money. These are reasons why that if the affirmative spends enough to actually solve the problem, they will link to the disadvantage. In terms of federalism, career and technical education is currently administered by state and local groups now. Federal intervention into a new area is definitely a link to federalism, though potentially for national security reasons, when it comes to cybersecurity, there might be a justification there. When it comes to politics, is CTE contentious? How does the stigma of vocational school impact the plan? How does spending that much money go over in Congress? If President Trump and Secretary DeVos support the plan, is there a backlash from people who just hate both of them? Is there a political capital trade-off if they're already pushing similar initiatives? These are all valid questions. When it comes to the trade-off disadvantage, the affirmative will require resources and time in the school day to teach such things, likely trading off with resources and time to teach other subjects. There are plenty of other disadvantages out there when you get to varsity. This case will likely link to all of them, especially some very strong advantage-specific turns. Given that there are 15 areas of career and technical education, You could write a disadvantage to any one of those. Unless the plan specifies that they're only focusing on cybersecurity, you'll still have a link. When it comes to counterplans, you've got plenty of options. The state's counterplan can attempt to solve CTE now. They could in theory find money, implement different standards, and otherwise attempt to do the plan. Whether that is enough and it won't bankrupt them is up for debate. The courts usually rule in cases of inequality, not economics. However, if CTE programs are, quote, separate but equal opportunities for students of color, there's definitely grounds for a ruling here that could get to the CTE impact as a whole. Additionally, court action like overturning San Antonio v. Rodriguez, which creates the right to education, could trickle down and impact CTE. The file includes an apprenticeship counterplan modeled off a program in Germany. There are pros and cons to apprenticeships versus CTE, and they potentially can coexist, depending on the disadvantages one reads. This is also an opportunity for a plan-inclusive counterplan. Choose to do only some of the plan and have a disadvantage to others. For example, you could do one or more of the 15 CTE sectors, but not others, and have specific disadvantages to those sectors you are leaving out. Or you could explain how politics or spending or another disadvantage links to the sectors you're leaving out, but not to the ones you're still going to execute. One of the biggest criticisms of vocational school was that it was created an underclass of underperforming students, often students of color, who were shuttled into lesser courses to get them into the workforce quickly, instead of treating them as ready for college. This sorting had a racial bias to it and was a product of the capitalist machine. Indeed, the whole idea of CTE is that education is designed to train people for the workforce, creating more cogs in the machine for capitalism. Think about the impacts. Economic growth encourages environmental degradation, abuse of workers, and other things, which are the impacts to capitalism. The Foucault critique links generally to this case, perhaps through federal overreach links and the sorting of students into college readiness or career readiness programs. When it comes to topicality, there are a number of reasons that this case could be questionably topical. Let's walk through a few of them. T-substantial is likely not a winning strategy, but it could be a way to supercharge your disadvantages, forcing the affirmative to discuss how big and bold their proposal is as links to spending and politics. You're probably not going to be able to win that the affirmative isn't education, since it's a curricular change. However, you could have a strong strategy based around topicality defining primary and or secondary education. Can the plan solve while only acting in K-12, or does it require community college action as well? Either the plan can't solve without community colleges, or they're untopical by going beyond the K-12 mandate. You can add in an extra topicality violation here to make your violation more threatening. Remember, topicality is always about your creativity and interpretation of the topic. Because this plan text does a lot, a multi-violation attack with new arguments not in the core file could be a good strategy.